I'm teacher of English at Sutton Coldfield Grammar School. And just a bit of context about the school. I've gone backwards. Sorry. So we do the AQA English Lit Tragedy, and we also do crime. I had a class of 11 students. The school's a state selected girls grammar school. We've got consistently high attainment at A level, so our average A star to B is 87%. I know that when I started teaching there, one of the things they said is they're not good at the section C questions. That was kind of an area to work on. So my class for year 12 were doing Othello, and then I was teaching them Keats and Death of a Salesman. And individually, they loved the two texts. Their assessments on those were a really high standard. Their individual work was really perceptive. And then suddenly we started trying to do the two texts together and making links. So I think this fits in really well with what Richard was doing. And I wish I'd had all Richard's ideas before I started this. Suddenly, their marks kind of plummeted, and they found it really difficult to navigate their way between the two texts, to engage with the quotation in the essay title, and to find that really, really difficult. And because Keats and Death of a Salesman are quite disparate, they found it really difficult to sort of see connections between the two. And whilst they loved both texts, they really found it difficult. And what I ended up with were essays where they just wrote all about Keats, then all about Death of a Salesman, and never the twain should meet. And it became very repetitive. They often lost sight of the argument. And so I started thinking, what the heck do I do? How do I do this? And I think, I don't know about everybody else, but there are so many brilliant ideas on Twitter. And I know I got this one. So if this is an idea I got from you, I'm really sorry. I can't remember. It's so long ago. But we pick up these new ideas, we try them, and sometimes we forget about older ideas that might have worked in the past. So racking my brains, thinking about things that I could have done with the students, I suddenly remembered using Hegel's dialectic with the old AQA B spec. And it was when I was doing a comparison of Wife of Bath and 'Tis Pity She's a Whore. And I remember using it, and using it really successfully. So I thought, actually, let's go and find that idea. So I found an old memory stick with all my information. So I apologise if I am teaching grandmothers to suck eggs, but just a quick rundown with Hegel's dialectic. Oh, I've gone backwards again. Sorry. So dialectics is looking at this idea of philosophical argument. So looking at contradictory process between opposing sides. It links back to Plato. Plato constructed his dialectics as an argument between Sophocles and another person. And Hegel took that idea, and instead of looking at characters arguing, he developed the idea around concepts. So that's what I kind of went with the students. So this was my advice when we looked at it. So we looked at this idea of the thesis statement that the questions in the exam provide. And usually they ask you to consider how far, to what extent you agree. And we talked about the idea of that can be simple agree, disagree, or it can be an agree, and what else could we talk about? And what I felt that dialectic did, and what the students started to see, was it made them really keep that quotation, that thesis statement, front and centre of their essays. So rather than these, random kind of, links with one text, then another text, then that repetition, then sometimes they got so bogged down with talking about that one text, they lost sight of that argument. It keeps that quotation, it keeps that thesis statement front and centre. So how it works is, this is the basic structure. And it's very visual. I constantly, by the end of the course, I just had to kind of put my hands into a triangle shape, and they all went, oh yeah, okay, Hegel, let's do that. And they drew a little triangle as part of their planning, and they started using it, without even thinking about it. So the thesis statement goes in the centre. Then on the left-hand side, we've got our thesis. So what agrees with that statement? Then the second side is the antithesis. So what's the other side of the argument? What have we got that disagrees with that, or what else could we say? And then at the top, again, students found it really difficult to bring together their ideas in a synthesis. So how do they kind of conclude? What conclusions do they make? So we had to go at this initially. So this is what the planning sheet looked like for them. So I gave this to them. It sort of gave them a thesis statements. This is just from one of the sample responses from the exam board. So I kind of got them to think about where they would put their ideas and what that planning should look like. I started it kind of quite low key. So I started it just with Keats. So we went back to, when we looked back at, go forward. We looked at La Belle Dame, and I gave them a thesis statement about La Belle Dame. And this was, I got one of my students to give me her very first attempt. And it's not brilliant, but she's starting to think about ideas for. So she's looking at the sort of traditional view. She's then using for the antithesis, she's using the feminist view. She's picking out quotations, and then she's coming to some conclusions. She's pulling together those two different views into kind of a synthesis. And so we started it really simply. Once they kind of got that kind of planning, I gave them some sentence starters that they could use as a way of hooking those ideas then onto paragraphs and sort of bringing together all those ideas in a kind of coherent argument. So they've had all these all the way through. And it was really lovely when I asked my student to send me some of her early Hegel's work. She had all these written down and she used those kind of quite regularly. So once I kind of got them happy with the idea of it, then I started sort of branching out. So I created lots of these, and I've had really good fun with these over the last 2 years, finding examples obviously from past questions, but in my own reading. So when I've read theorists, when I've read critical essays, I've seen a sentence and gone, that's really good, I'll add that to my kind of Hegel's list. And I've got kind of a big pile of these, so I'm really happy to put those on the shared drive, or if anybody wants to get in touch with me, I can send them to you. So I've got a whole pile for tragedy. So we've done this in class, so they've used these on big kind of A3 sheets. They've added their ideas, they've passed them around and added to, and then I photocopied them for them as a little pack. But we've used it as a kind of a planning tool as we're going through, certainly with the section C questions, and it worked really well. Suddenly they started writing kind of coherent arguments. They kept that thesis statement at the center of their argument, and everything they did about the text hooked onto that, and they weren't tempted to kind of go off on a tangent. So I was really pleased with how it worked, and it was just really nice to get an old idea and reuse it and think, actually, yeah, that why haven't I been using that recently? Why did I kind of forget about it? The more recent ones that we did as part of our revision of Othello, we used the same kind of idea, and this kind of just shows you how the students have kind of developed. This is much more focused, it's much more thorough. There are all the ideas are ideas about the text rather than just kind of quotations and a view. They're starting to think about their arguments. So this was, I gave them this as quite a hard question about female characters in Othello, and again it allowed them to kind of structure a really coherent argument. And then I've got another one, and what I really like about this example, this student really struggled with, not with understanding, but with writing responses. And what I really liked about this one, the fact that she's underlined key words from the thesis statement, just shows that engagement with the question, engagement with the, so using this as a really proper planning sheet in order to kind of structure her argument. And her latest essays were, head and shoulders above what she was doing at the beginning of the course. So it was just really lovely to see how she's been using the Hegel to kind of structure her, a coherent argument. So I think I might have finished early, Laura. I'm doing quite well, a couple of minutes early.
I think you're on time, yeah.
I'm like, okay, good. So just the last thing, I just wanted to share this. This is what they presented me at the end of the course. And it kind of just showed that kind of, half jokey kind of, oh, Mrs. Obsessed with Hegel's dialectic, but actually just how it's been an integral part of them developing as writers and as sort of critical thinkers. And I just really like the fact that I was the synthesis at the top. It kind of made me feel all fuzzy. Those are the two ways you could contact me if you want any more details about this, because I know I've gibbered. So you can email me and I can send you, I've got, as I say, for Othello and for the tragedy questions, I've got loads of these already set up, or if you wanted them as a Word document, I could send those. I've got blank ones as well, and then that's my Twitter handle, and I will shut up now and stop gibbering. Okay, and I'll stop sharing now.
Lisa, that was amazing. I think it's Mary next. So if you could start loading up, but I've never that before. But that was so interesting. I love it when kids give you gifts. I think it's such a special moment. But I love the example that you showed. I think it's a good way to just get them thinking, for at that planning stage. And I definitely think there's going to be a lot of questions about this and already in the chat. So thank you so much. It's so hard when you have to squeeze everything in really quickly, but genuinely I think I've heard a lot more about that. Thank you so much. So I think there's a few people asking for email on the chat, so back to you. I'm just gonna